In 2022, Rockstar Games was gearing up for one of the most anticipated game launches in history, Grand Theft Auto 6. Millions of dollars poured into development, security, and of course, protecting their game files from leaks. But despite all their efforts, one hacker managed to break in. Not only did they steal over 90 videos of early gameplay, but they also got their hands on Rockstar's source code, the holy grail of any game's security. And here's the crazy part. They were just 17 years old. The gaming industry invests millions into anti-piracy measures. They develop complex DRMs, encrypt game files, and require online authentication. But every time, hackers manage to break through. Cyberpunk 2077? Cracked in less than a day. Resident Evil Village? Bypassed in less than a week. Even Denuvo, one of the most infamous anti-piracy protections, has seen multiple versions cracked. So, how does this keep happening? How do hackers tear apart security measures that took years to develop in just a matter of days? Well, it turns out that protecting a game is a lot harder than breaking it. And to understand how hackers do it, we need to start from the beginning, the early days of game protection. Back in the 1980s and 90s, game developers had a simple approach to stopping piracy. Make sure only paying customers could access the game. One of the earliest methods? Serial numbers. When you bought a game, it came with a unique code. Type it in, and the game would unlock. Simple, right? The problem? People started sharing codes. Once a serial number got out, it worked for everyone. So developers stepped it up. They introduced physical protections like manual-based DRM. Some games asked for a specific word from the instruction manual. If you didn't have the manual, you couldn't play. Code wheels. Monkey Island used a rotating code wheel that you had to align correctly. Hidden messages on CDs. Some games even required you to read text printed on the actual game disc. But hackers always found a way. If a game checked for a code, hackers removed the check. If it required a disc, they made no CD cracks. Even dongles, USB devices required to play certain games, were cloned or emulated within days. By the late 90s, piracy was out of control and companies needed a real solution. That's when a new kind of protection started appearing, DRM. By the early 2000s, game companies had had enough. CD keys, manuals, and code wheels were child's play for hackers. So they introduced something much more advanced. Digital Rights Management, DRM. One of the first major DRMs was SecuROM, a protection system designed to prevent copying and unauthorized access. It worked by encrypting game files so they couldn't be modified, checking for the original disk every time you launched the game, running hidden processes in the background to detect tampering. It was supposed to be unbreakable, but in reality, it barely lasted a week. Then came Starforce, which took things further. It installed deep into the system, scanning for virtual drives and even preventing some DVD burners from working. Some gamers even claimed it damaged their hardware, but despite all that, hackers still cracked it. Fast forward to the 2010s, and the most notorious DRM of them all appeared, Denuvo. Unlike older DRMs, Denuvo didn't just check for a valid copy, it constantly ran in the background, encrypting and decrypting game files in real time to make tampering nearly impossible. For a while, it seemed like hackers were finally defeated. But then, a group known as CPY cracked Just Cause 3, a game protected by Denuvo, in just a few months. And once the first version was broken, newer versions followed faster and faster. Resident Evil Village cracked in less than a week. Sonic Frontiers? One day, the arms race between hackers and game companies was heating up. But there was one thing DRM couldn't stop: the rise of always online gaming. DRM was losing the battle, so game companies took things to the next level: always online authentication. Instead of just protecting files on a local computer, they moved critical parts of the game to their own servers. The idea? If hackers couldn't access the code, they couldn't crack the game. Ubisoft was one of the first to push this system, requiring players to be constantly connected to their servers to verify ownership. If your internet dropped, the game kicked you out. Then came games like Diablo 3 and SimCity 2013, which required an internet connection to function, even in single player. The result? Disastrous launches, servers overloaded, Players were locked out of games they had paid for, and the backlash was massive. But for hackers, it was just another challenge. They adapted by creating server emulators, fake online servers that tricked games into thinking they were connected to the official ones. Instead of breaking the DRM itself, they mimicked the game's online responses, letting pirated copies function as if they were legit. Games like World of Warcraft, designed to be uncrackable due to their online-only nature, had fully functional private servers where people played for free. The gaming industry had one last card to play. They stopped just verifying the game online and started moving the game itself to the cloud. So how do hackers actually crack a game? It's not just pressing a magic button, there's a process behind it. Let's break it down. Step 1. Reverse engineering. The protection hackers start by launching the game with special debugging tools like IDA Pro or X64DBG. These tools let them see exactly what's happening under the hood. Every security check, every encryption method, every piece of code that stops the game from running without a valid purchase. One of the first things they look for? The game's authentication check. Most modern DRMs work by asking, does this player own the game? If the answer is no, the game locks itself. Hackers track where this check happens in the code and either disable it or force it to always return yes. Step 2. Bypassing DRM encryption. Denuvo and similar DRMs don't just check ownership. They encrypt game files so they can't be altered. But here's the catch. At some point, the game has to decrypt itself to run. Hackers use memory dumping techniques to grab the fully unlocked game while it's running and save it as a cracked version. Step 3. Removing online checks. Many modern games require constant online verification. Hackers get around this by intercepting network traffic and seeing what the game is communicating to the servers, mimicking server responses so the game thinks it's getting the correct authentication, creating fake servers that replace the official ones, letting people play offline or on pirated networks. Step 4. Testing and releasing the crack. Once the game is cracked, it's tested across different systems to make sure it works properly. This is where release groups come in, teams like CPY-CODEX and RELOADED. They polish the crack, package it, and release it to pirate sites. Sometimes they even add their own custom installers, logos, and greetings, marking their victory over the game's security. The arms race continues. But here's the thing. Game developers know this process too. Every time a game is cracked, companies analyze how it was done and update their protections. That's why cracking groups have to constantly evolve, learning new tricks to stay ahead. But there's one shift happening in gaming that may finally change the game for good. For decades, hackers have cracked almost every protection thrown at them. Serial numbers, DRM, always online checks, none of them lasted. But game companies have found one method that hackers might never fully break: cloud gaming. Instead of running the game on your PC or console, services like GeForce Now, Xbox Cloud Gaming, and PlayStation Now stream the entire game from remote servers. That means there's nothing to crack because the game never actually runs on your device. It's like trying to pirate Netflix. You can't just download a movie from the platform, you only receive the video stream. The same logic applies to cloud gaming. All the game logic, physics, and AI stay on the company's servers. The player just gets a live feed of the game. For hackers, this is a nightmare. There's no executable file to modify, no DRM to bypass, no way to run the game offline. If companies move fully to cloud-based gaming, cracking as we know it could disappear entirely. But will that happen? Not so fast. Cloud gaming requires super fast internet, and many players still prefer owning their games. Until the world shifts entirely to the cloud, traditional game cracking will continue to thrive. And even then, hackers always find a way. For now, the arms race between game developers and hackers isn't over. It's just moving to the next level. Are you curious about these techniques and malware techniques in specific? I highly suggest you check out my other video where I discuss all the malware techniques. Thanks for watching the video and subscribe.